three big questions we're getting about Russia and Ukraine right now are: one, why is Russia so interested in Ukraine? Two, what kind of risk are we looking at that this could blow up beyond Ukraine? And three, if there is an invasion, how would we evacuate Americans? Let's start on that one. The United States does not have a specific list of Americans currently living in Ukraine, but estimates as of October of last year put the number at 6,600 Americans staying or living in Ukraine heading into late last year. And if Russia invades, the 82nd Airborne, which is now in Poland, could help evacuate remaining Americans who want out from their positions across the border in Poland.
If that's what we're called to do, we're capable to do that. These soldiers could be used with to some degree with evacuation assistance on the other side of that border.
The next big question, of course, is why Ukraine? Putin's interest in Ukraine goes back to when they were joined as part of the Soviet Empire. Putin is now 69 years old, potentially in the waning years of his dictatorship, and he's reportedly very interested in how historians will remember him. Well, Putin describes the fall of the Soviet Union as the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century. As Putin sees it, Ukraine should still be under control of the Kremlin.
When the Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine became an independent state, and I think a lot of Russians have resented that because they've seen their empire, disappear, and they have this cultural and historical attachment to Ukraine.
From the old Soviet Guard's point of view, Ukraine was home to Trotsky and Brezhnev and other heroes of the old Soviet Empire, and it is a source of valuable industry and an object of possession. That's how they see it. It's why you may have heard of Ukraine being referred to as the Ukraine. But Ukraine's government and most of its 44 million people don't want that. They identify with the West and want to maintain cooperation and good relations with the United States. In fact, recent polling shows a majority of the people in Ukraine would support a referendum to join NATO. And that appears to have triggered Vladimir Putin. In terms of the timing of this, keep in mind that Putin also is facing waves of COVID infections in Russia and all the economic problems that go with that. And it appears to have fueled protests within Russia that Putin could try to quell by projecting military conquest and by seizing the economic assets of Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin may also want to invade Ukraine for the same reason why many of his critics wind up dead, or like Alexei Navalny, wind up poisoned or imprisoned. He considers them to be a threat to the Russian dictatorship. As Ukraine strengthens ties with the West and continues to gain investment from the West, if it continues to democratize and it continues to grow and prosper, that could serve as a model for what the Russian people might want their country to be, and therefore challenge Putin's authority and everything that he's worked for all these decades. So as long as Ukraine identifies with the West, Vladimir Putin has a vested interest in either its failure or its surrender.
The situation is very perilous.
That leads us to the third big question. What's the risk here this could blow up beyond Ukraine?
It would be the largest invasion since World War II. It would change the world.
Well, Ukraine is not part of the NATO alliance, so neither the United States nor our European allies would go to war with Russia to defend it. But that said, there are some troubling scenarios that we hope won't happen, but certainly are within the realm of possibility. The first would go back to the U.S. and our partners in Europe trying to evacuate their citizens in the midst of invasion. If Russian troops either purposefully or accidentally attack and kill Americans or allied civilians in the crossfire, that could certainly draw in NATO nations and the United States. Beyond that, think of the United States and NATO forces protecting our allies and neighboring countries during a Russian invasion of Ukraine. Think about all the spy planes and the warplanes from a network of nations circling around one another. Maybe just one mistaken identity or one false move, an inadvertent strike, could ignite a much larger war. And that's just in Europe. Russia is now in league with China, signing this new pact stating there are no forbidden areas of cooperation. While Russia would like to absorb Ukraine and may do it through invasion, China wants to absorb Taiwan and has stepped up flights of fighter jets around it.
The complete reunification of our motherland is an aspiration shared by the people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait.
If Russia invades Ukraine, we're not obligated to defend it militarily, and we won't. But if China invades Taiwan, there's what we call strategic ambiguity on that point. In other words, Congress and the president could come to Taiwan's defense. It raises the risk of conflict in Europe and the Pacific, and it draws some parallels to World War II.
We know how China claims its claims on Taiwan. It has territorial disputes with India on its borders. So if we now live in a world where you can just go in and take a country because you claim it or parts of it belong to you, and you can do so militarily, well, we've entered a very dangerous period in human history once again.
And it may all be coming to a head now in Eastern Europe, which is why we're all closely watching, and we're all hoping that diplomacy will pay off.